Whew. Hey, kitty cat. Trying to stay cool. 10th day, 100 degrees in a row here in Dallas. 10th day where my nation is, actually it's way more than the 10th day, where we're technically out of money to spend, going with it. I'm going to talk about the debt limit again. I think everybody sees now why I've been talking about it. Like this, the impasse is not a small one. There's actually a couple various impasses, not only the ideological difference, but like the way the political situation is set up now in the House of Representatives. John Boehner's Republicans don't have enough votes to pass the crazy version of their bill. Although if they passed the same debt version, just passed it, they could just pass it and pass it on the Senate. We could do it. This is why my last video about how they tried to pass it and then voted down their own bill was so dumb, because we wouldn't even be having this discussion then. So there's a debt crisis also that happened this week in Italy, which is part of what makes this whole other discussion, this is kind of the global context, why I talk about international politics, because we don't live in a vacuum anymore. So there's a couple debt crises that have gone on. They had the Greece one, which was little, and then Italy, which is quite a bit larger. This is all the backdrop over the U.S., like kind of this manufactured debt ceiling crisis. Because you have to remember this debt ceiling limit is one that Congress put in so they don't have to approve every single little appropriation they do. They just basically raise the overall limit, and that's it. That's all it is. It's, if you read some of the old bills that they passed, they are literally like 2 sentences long. We replace this number with this number. That's it. So that's what this whole thing is. And if you look back on the 4 times the current Republican leadership passed it under Bush, that's what it looks like. None of this, oh, we need to cut Medicare, Mr. Bush, before we're going to raise that debt limit, pay for those wars. We're still paying for those wars, by the way. Still have the same low tax rates. But now, for some reason, like increasing that debt limit to allow us to continue to pay for this and also underwrite the global economy. And this is one of the things that the U.S. does that a lot of people don't quite realize, and we get benefits from this. People complain about we gave out $4 trillion in loans to banks all around the world during the crisis. Yeah, and then we got paid back and made about $90 billion. That's what we do. That's one of the benefits of being that. Instead of being someone like Ireland or Italy or Greece or somebody who has to go and be like, hey, can we, do this? We kind of be like, QE2? Cool, QE2. 600 bill? All right, 600 bill. And we can't really do that forever and ever. But we did it, and it sustained the economy. But now that we have this debt ceiling that we knew we were going to hit when they passed the budget back in December, it's screwing everything up, and it really is causing problems. It was funny, I did a post about this and wrote about it, how a couple of analysts were talking about how the U.S. economy kind of hit a brick wall back in May, and it was May 16th when the U.S. hit the debt ceiling. Now, this is why I wanted to talk about this real quick. I know I've had a lot of context on this, but you need to understand how big this issue is, right? This is why Tim Geithner is like, I think I'm going to quit rather than deal with this crap. The U.S. ran last year about a $1.4 trillion deficit over the year, the fiscal year. That's $1.4 trillion. That's about $100 billion a month. Okay, we officially, technically hit the debt limit on May 16th, right? It's nearly 2 months ago. Okay, since then, what he's been doing is transferring some stuff over from some other funds and paying some bills. But you got to realize that cost, that transfer that he's doing, is $100 billion a month. That he's like just shuffling stuff around. That's not like a little bit of money. So it's been $200 billion now. This is why he said, look, by August 2nd, you guys got to make a deal, because I'm doing what I can, but by then it's just, because then it's every day, right? $100 billion a month, every day, coming up with checks to pay Social Security and all that. He's got to find $3 billion. $3 billion a day. Now, I don't know, I understand, like some of you maybe run businesses or do that. That's $3,000 million, right? 3,000 million, that's $3 billion a day, just to pay the bills, right? And what we can do, because we underwrite the global economy, and actually can make this money and pay it back, is we can say, we're going to raise our limit and let this go up a little bit more until we can get it stabilized, and then we can pay it back. That's the idea. But because they won't raise the debt limit, we got to find a way. $3 billion a day is basically what we're running over. And now this deal, Republicans will refuse to sign off on raising this unless we cut all this stuff. And the Democrats are like, well, you know, part of the problem here is we're not pulling in enough money. And we can't, and this is the thing, you can't cut enough to balance it. We're not pulling in enough. There's just no way to do it. So I think it's going to be funny. This is very fun to watch if it didn't have such repercussions. There was a big drop in the stock market today, which was for Italy. The one, if it happens, if they finally do the bond markets, if somebody finally makes that bet and it switches over and all those computer programs start realizing, like, you gotta understand, this is like one of the things, like when you write an analysis program to analyze stock market transactions and be able to keep up with this real time and do that, you write in base assumptions, and one of those base assumptions is about U.S. Treasuries. And so they might even have to be updating the software to allow the concept of the U.S. Treasury default into their models. If this happens and they all click on that same day, it's not going to be like it was in that 7 minutes of hell after they didn't pass the TARP the first time. And the global economy was like, whoa! And then they passed it a few days later, because without it, we would have had a total crash. And so, if we get it, I'm curious, I'm going to say it's going to happen about the 27th, maybe, if we don't get it by then. So we got about 2 weeks. It's not going to be the August 2nd. Nobody's waiting until the last day to pull the trigger. Somebody's going to make a deal or bet, probably around the 27th, unless they get that deal before then, and you'll see 1,000 points in a day. That's my prediction. If they don't get this done. 1,000 points in the stock market in a day, probably around the 25th, 6th, 7th, if they don't get a deal soon. Could be wrong. We'll see. But there you go. That's my prediction on this hot afternoon. Peace out. See what happens. Better make a deal, guys. It's no joke.